Setelani nyali kuno kukaya Alundazi Box 1 kanele Mundubile na munyake make bibiza Na mama Abrenda Nyirenda Simbi za Jelemani
That there is former Vice Republican President Dr. Guy Scott speaking in London at a conference. May his soul rest in peace. And just to reflect on his life, we have renowned historian Dr. Seshua joining us from his base in South Africa to share his reflections on the death of Dr. Scott. Doc, good morning and welcome to the Red Hot Breakfast.
Good morning, Peter, and good morning, listeners.
Well, Doc, Zambia is mourning following the death of Dr. Guy Scott. You got to know the man very well. How would you summarize his life?
Yes, it's correct. I knew Dr. Scott well. I knew him and the wife, Charlotte. We met a number of times, and I knew that he had done well. I even checked on him a few days ago. I asked the wife how he's doing, and she responded cautiously. So I was very saddened to hear that he has passed away. Dr. Guy Scott, was born on 1st June 1944 in Livingstone. And I think that is important because unlike other, white Zambians who later on participated in public life, such as Simon Zukas, Andrew Sadanis, and others, he was actually born in the country because when you talk about other white Zambians like those I mentioned, they were immigrants who arrived in the country and then got involved in the nationalist struggle, but also in the country's public life. So that sense is very important because as we shall see later on, it was to become a major source of controversy in relation to his citizenship, which was embarrassing, I think, for somebody who was as Zambian as you and I. His parents were themselves British settlers. Alexander Scott, his father, arrived in Zambia in 1929 from Scotland, and went on to work in various sectors, but he is most remembered for having established the newspaper that is today Zambia's Daily Mail, which contributed quite greatly to the nationalist sentiment. And he was also a member of Parliament, I think from 1953, in Lusaka as an independent MP. So you can understand some of the political consciousness that shaped Guy's later life. His mother was a nurse, Grace Keith, who arrived in Zambia much later. He met the father in 1943, and then they had Guy in 1944. He was there were about 4 children in the family. One of them went to Zimbabwe, where he joined Smith, and was kicked out when Mugabe and nationalist guys won power there. The other one went back to the UK, and then you had the only female who married an Englishman, and they went back to the UK. And the parents, the father died in 1960. The mother, I think, died in 2003. In fact, I remember that when you met Guy, one of his, sense of humor found expression in the kind of jokes he told. He would say, I have 2 ambitions. One is to live up to 89 years old, which was the age at which his mother died. So in that sense, I think he has fallen just short because he died at 82. The other ambition was to become a Tonga in the next life. And I think that he is on course to achieving that because he often joked that, as a white, you couldn't have 2 wives at the same time. You had to have a wife and potentially a mistress, but you couldn't have two wives with equal status. But as a Tonga, you could have as many wives as possible, and they thought that was something to aspire to. So he went to school in Zimbabwe at a school called Peterhouse. At the time, in Zimbabwe, which was southern Rhodesia, had the best of schools. So his parents sent him there at Peterhouse, and then he subsequently went to the University of Cambridge, where he graduated in 1965 after studying economics and mathematics. And then 1966 he came back and got married. He married this Yugoslav Russian lady, and they had about 3 children before they went on to divorce in 1988. But he worked in the Ministry of Finance as an economist from after he came back from Cambridge until the 70s, when he branched off to do something in journalism, working for a magazine that concentrated in Eastern Central Africa in the 70s. And then in the 80s, he felt bored. The political direction, the life of the country's politics didn't impress him much. So he got his children and wife, and they went to the UK, where he studied for his PhD at University of Sussex in artificial intelligence. When you actually look at there's a life story he gave in the interview in 2004. If you look at that story, he uses the term AI. You would think this is a term that is very recent, but actually he that's what he studied as early as the 1980s. So when you talk about machine learning, these are not new things. Even artificial intelligence, the term itself was used by Guy Scott in that interview in 2004. And in 1988, while he in the UK, he divorced his wife. He used to joke that people fall out of love, and we felt we stopped loving each other, and we parted. That is important because it paved the way for Charlotte Scott, as we shall discuss very soon. And then we heard that Kaunda, was had introduced, had agreed to return to multi-party politics in the 90s. And he packed his bags. He was working at Oxford University as an engineer in the Department of Engineering, as a research staff in the Department of Engineering at the time. So he packed his bags and left and came to Zambia. I think just after the MMD convention had happened in July 1990, and it was at the MMD convention, rather just after the MMD founding had happened in July 1990. It was at the MMD convention in early 1991 where he met people like Michael Sata, and that is important because the two were to have a very, very successful life in later years. Guy Scott himself stood as a chairman for agriculture in the MMD. He didn't have any background in terms of training in agriculture, even though he was very instrumental to forming a number of agriculture interventions such as the Mpongwe agriculture work that is very, very renowned now. That was his creation, and he bought a couple of farms in Osaka, in Lilanda, where he grew up, part of George compound today. And after 1990, when they were in the MMD, he felt that because he was chairman for agriculture, he needed a constituency which was rural, because you couldn't have an urban constituency if you're in charge of agriculture. So he reached Michael Sata and said, listen, I want a constituency where I can stand as member of parliament. It was Sata who advised him to stand in Mpika, which was Sata's birthplace. And Sata himself said, I'm going to continue to stand in Kabwata, but I'll help you campaign because I come from there. As you know, Sata had been MP for Kabwata since 1983, and that was really the genesis of their friendship. He went to campaign, and he came back with two things. One was the seat, which he won in 1991. The other that he scooped was Charlotte Scott. He met Charlotte during the campaigns there because she was working on a British project, and the two married until now, and they were to become very, very public figures who dedicated their lives to Zambia. Charlotte herself is an outstanding Zambian in her own right, and then after the government, the MMD won power in 1991. Guy was appointed the Minister of Agriculture by Frederick Chiluba. He's best remembered, as you know, Peter, for the role that he played following the 1992 drought. We often hear the current leaders say, we have had the worst drought. Actually, the worst one was in 1992, one would argue, because it affected the whole region, and Zambia had significant food shortages. Guy imported yellow maize because there was no white maize in the region. As I said, everybody was affected. And to save the people from dying, he got maize from the US. yellow maize. So the first time Zambians were exposed to yellow maize. So there was, as you can imagine, we are used to a white maize. There was a lot of hostility toward this yellow maize, and they called him Mr. Yellow Maize. But he saved the situation because nobody died as a result of that. Chiluba claimed that the guy had commissions on some of the maize patches, and he dismissed him from cabinet in 1993. Even though he remained MP from Pika, there was very little truth to that. I don't think that Chiluba could dismiss anyone for corruption, given his own corruption himself. And then Guy, remained as MP until just before the 96 election, when he did something that was very, very uncharacteristic, but it would affect him much later because he voted for the constitutional amendment that resulted in the blocking of former President Kenneth Kaunda and introduced the parentage clause in the constitution, which said if you didn't have parents who were born in Zambia, then you couldn't stand for presidency. And then he got disillusioned with the MMD and left to form what you called Lima Party with Ben Kapita just before the 1996 election. It was a small party targeted at farmers, and but they lost very badly in the 96 election. And I think after that he withdrew quietly, formed a couple of alliances with the Dini Mungomba initially of the Zambia Democratic Congress, ADECO, to form ZAP, Zambia Alliance for Progress, and then that didn't go further well. They joined hands with Benny Mwila just before the 2001 elections alongside Suvia Masegwa. Again, that didn't go down well. And then when Michael Sata was disillusioned by President Chiluba's failure to anoint him as his successor and branched away from the PF, Guy Scott joined Sata, again, a testament of their friendship. They started the PF together. Very few people gave him the chance. People looked at Sata as a clown. Guy Scott believed in Sata genuinely, had the sense of loyalty towards him, but he also, I think, enjoyed his native intelligence. The two were to lead the PF into government 10 years later. Guy initially served as Secretary General of the PF and then as Vice President. In 2011, when Sata won power, Guy became the Vice President, and that appointment was not without controversy. This is a Zambian, as I said, who was like any one of us, born in the country and grew up there and worked for it. And but there were people in the PF who looked at Guy as less Zambian on account of his race. They accepted Sata, they accepted Guy in opposition because he helped them win power. And after Sata appointed him vice president, they undermined him in several ways. Guy knew this. Some of these people have died, others are still alive. And when Michael Sata died in 2014, by operation of the constitution, Guy Scott should have been the acting president without any question. But when Sata left for London, where he died, he left Edgar Lungu acting as the Minister of Defense. And the constitution at the time stated that whenever there's a vacancy in the office of president, the vice president shall take over. But Edgar Lungu said, no, I was already in this position. I'm not going to take over. And, Guy was not one to fight for positions. Initially, he wanted to say, look, I don't want to fight with anyone. They can have it. But the Attorney General, Musa Mwenye, at the time, stood up together with the Secretary of Cabinet, Laurent Msiska, and said, look, no, it's not about what you want, it's about what the law provides for. The law says you should be the acting president. And there was a huge standoff in cabinet. Those people who had undermined Guy when he was vice president, people like Alexander Chikwanda, in fact, 2/3 of cabinet, were the ones who were supporting Lungu and the lawlessness that they wanted to perpetrate. And if you remember, Michael Sata himself, I think, created that lawlessness because after he appointed him vice president, he never appointed Guy as acting president, which was a breach of the constitution. I spoke to Mumba Malila, who was Attorney General from 2011, I think 2014, when Musa Mwenye came in to say, but why did you allow this lawlessness on the part of Sata to continue? Malila was able to say, look, we advise Sata to say, this is wrong, you should appoint Guy because that's what the constitution provides for. But Sata was quite impervious to advice. So Sata created those conditions in which that faction in the PF undermines him at his death. But Musa Mwenye, to his credit, stood his ground and says, no, not under my watch. And it was on that account that Guy became the acting president and presided over the smooth transition that followed. You know, he's known for refusing to use public resources when the PF candidate Edgar Lungu eventually had his way. And I thought he presided over the transition very, very well.
Okay.
After Lungu won power, he said he's not my friend. He became cabinet, so he went out of public life. Wrote his memoirs, a very, very good book that I would encourage people to read. And of course, he was unwell and he died yesterday.
Doc, thank you for giving us that history about the life of our former Republican vice president. Now, as we conclude, what will be Dr. Scott's legacy?
I think a couple of points there. The first is that it's important for all Zambians, you know, across racial groups to participate in public life. Guy embodied that. You know, he didn't see himself as a white Zambian. He saw himself as a Zambian, and we had this kind of crop of Zambians from ethnic minorities. You know, Suresh Desai, Deepak Patel, as I said, Simon Zukas. Reverend Christoph and Sadanis and others, we are losing that kind of inclusiveness. I don't know what has happened with our politics. You hardly find Zambians with ethnic minorities in our politics today. It's important that we encourage them and create that country, that one Zambia, one nation, in which everybody feels that Zambia belongs to them. But of course, we have had those kind of difficulties where, you know, in key moments, sometimes we look down upon Zambians who come from other racial groups, even when they are Zambian as the black Zambian. So I think that's the first point: the need for Zambians to embrace everyone, but also the need for Zambians with ethnic minority to participate in public life. The second one is really the lesson about, you know, the kind of laws that we create. If you remember, when Guy Scott was MP, as I said, in '96, he helped pass the amendment that barred Kaunda at the time. He was MMD MP, and he wasn't part of cabinet, so he was not bound by collective responsibility, and yet he voted for that constitutional amendment in the belief that they were punishing Kaunda. That law is actually what prevented Guy Scott from becoming president of Zambia in 2014. If, for example, there was no parentage clause, I have no doubt in my mind that Guy Scott would have won the Zambian, would have stood as PF presidential candidate in 2015 and even won the presidency, because Zambians loved Guy. You know, I don't think they would have held their seat, their support from him on account of his race. But it teaches us that, you know, it's very important as we create laws never to target individuals, because these things can come back to haunt us. The third lesson, I think, is that which is on a personal level, to say, look, when you no longer love each other, don't be in a loveless marriage. Divorce, it's okay, especially when you married young. Guy made joke of the idea that, you know, I married when I was 22, so he fell out of love. Rather than remaining in a loveless marriage, you know, it's important to free each other, and it's okay to divorce and find love again, because he did that. You don't have
Family, good day, and thank you very much for joining us. Share the broadcast. Let's share the broadcast. Today we have special attention being paid to the late Vice President, who was also acting president for 90 days, Guy Lindsay Scott. So share the broadcast. We begin, then we'll give you an update on what's happening around the country, around the campaigns. Both Brian Mundwil and Makepi Zulu are now in Lusaka, and President Hakainde Hichilema has been on a tour of northern and Muchinga provinces. Today he was, I think, in Kaputa and Chilubi, and the boys, as we call them, were in. First, they held two emotional rallies. The Chilanga rally held in the dark with people holding phones, and the Chongwe rally where people waited for the boys to come from Luangwa. I think also those were two remarkable, very emotional political rallies that they held. And President Hakainde Hichilema continues to draw crowds in areas where he's going, but they're all in red, they're all in uniform. So is he addressing members? Is he addressing residents? Is he addressing voters? Who are these people who are all in red? And so we do an update on that. But I started with a narrative by historian Dr. Sishua on Dr. Guy Scott. Dr. Guy Scott has written a book where he documented his life, and literally there were his memoirs. And Dr. Guy Scott was no ordinary person. He could have been Scottish, and his father was Scottish, but look, they were literally Zambians. His father, Dr. Alexander Scott, was aligned with the liberation movement of UNIP and participated. He's one of those few white people that stood on the side of Africans. That is the father to Dr. Guy Scott. In fact, he even founded the Zambia Daily Mail. We'll be discussing him, and I'll be giving you my personal perspective because I had various interactions with Dr. Scott. So quickly give the share the broadcast. We commence. You share the broadcast so that we begin in earnest. Share the broadcast. Someone says they want this Tumbuka song. It will be our transition to the details around Dr. Guy Scott, and then I'll be opening phone lines to hear from you. What do you remember about Dr. Guy Lindsay Scott, who was vice president? And what does it mean? Because he was president for a period of 90 days, although in a caretaker form. In other countries, these are treated as heads of state. What does our constitution say? What did it say then? Can you call Guy Scott as president of our country? Because various media organizations recognized him as the first white African president from a settler community. Of course, ignore the apartheid South Africa. F.W. de Klerk was president, but he came from apartheid, and there was a transition period. He was president until Nelson Mandela was formally elected as president, and he appointed W. de Klerk as his deputy. There were two vice presidents, Thabo Mbeki and de Klerk. So there's been a debate whether Guy Scott wasn't the first vice president. And in our case, I'll refer to a case in the Bembaland, why the Archdiocese of Kasama and the Chitimukulu hold the same title. I'll give you a brief about that. So share the broadcast, Where is that Tumbuka song that you want? Let me look for it.
So I'm your malushi, yon samarabish. 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 Tupele mada Zambia, kumwa umewafundwa. Tupele mada Zambia, kumwa umewafundwa. Muchalo tabulayo, tuleana mundubile.
Samkulu alikuwa tamaka ndemi pala bamundubile pano lipaka subakata ndemoni ndeti pa 13 August abantu bandi kuno kunsama chieftain bale mipere kwa tema politics tulelanda abantu ikiri mu mind mu yabo ni change bafyo bene bale ikala neke bale mona mu wika shibamo echo bale fu afere change yaba mundubile te kumitemo bamitemenwe abantu ikiri pofe yene yali panchiuba atuefu afe change so muri change imuna imwele mwana isa muri change bombeleni kwa
nana besa sosa abantu bale
bombeleni abantu bale fu afe change bombeleni abantu bamundubile kumyeno beba cyagakira kamushika senge ni kumyeno mukwaite tupose bya abantu inshita pya muri samfwe fifine muna mwaisa efyo tusaka maneni na amafoni bali tushimya na mayobonse bana lumango bali tushimya so na tepa neve na setu tuisuire ni kwa mafoni keru pia tulelo omba kuli
uri na menso amone uri na matuna nkonfwe ifyo mpasha kwa de saule sosa kalanda kudu yo akwashe nyari no kuyifisa banta washe nyari awifisa iyo kuvyala no kusombola mwebe na Zambia ichili chose chali kwete chita ya chikope samba ya chalo muikalisha mufi lamba mulelila uwacha no waila sangeni chita ya kubeba mkusheleza bachalo ulubuto na lumona ulo ako akazo ako bachalo pepanono inyali yena ya sanika ulubuto na lumona ako akaso ako ikweshela pepanono inyaliena yalasanika inangwa manja ya fulolu pyangono kukakawakayele ichetekele inyaliena yalasanika imotwikatane tutemwane tutamvye mwensakabinga atochosha muno ikalanga bana banshiwa inenesa na mumona ikweshala ngepanono inyaliena yalasanika ukubakona kumona apabula bemba twabuke ikweshala ngepanono yalasanika sekelela
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Please share the broadcast. The demise of the late Vice President, Guy Lindsay Scott. I posed the question on my Facebook. Should we mourn him and remember him as president or vice president? I like the piece that has been written by Dr. Katele Kalumba, you know, under his name of Kaka Musimanga. I think that's how he calls himself, but it's Dr. Katele Kalumba, former finance minister. He says, yes, Guy Scott was never sworn in as president. The Constitution designated him as acting president. He was a care president. He was president, but he wasn't an elected president. He wasn't a sworn-in president. Was he vice president? Of course, he was vice president for the duration of 2011 to 2015, when President Edgar Lungu, won elections and appointed Mama Inonge winner, who became Zambia's first female vice president. So how do we mourn him? So I liken the case of Kgalema Motlanthe. If you follow South African politics, Thabo Mbeki, the way South Africa is, and the ANC, they decided that they will have their elective Congress 2 years before an election, especially when the president has served 2 terms. This is to allow the new president that is elected to familiarize himself, take hold of the party, and familiarize himself with government. And remember, the vice president under the ANC regulations becomes president. And in the event that the vice president is elected president, he still has to wait 2 years. So that's what happened in South Africa in 1997. Zuma, who was vice president, there was a huge tussle. Thabo Mbeki tried to reduce the influence of Jacob Zuma. But look, Jacob Zuma was a veteran. He was head of the intelligence while they were in exile. And while Thabo Mbeki was, they called him a philosopher king, because he was philosophizing everything, like he does, the videos that we share. And he was academic in approach. He was loved across Africa. But Africans in South Africa were impatient for development. And the ANC felt that Thabo Mbeki was detached. So he defeated Thabo Mbeki, who had only served 1 term as president. He was eligible for another term, but he was defeated at the ANC election in 2007, not 1997. But the elections were only due in 2009. And because of the animosity that had preceded the elections, Jacob Zuma was arrested, charged with corruption, accused of immorality. Jacob Zuma was married to 5 wives. His name was scandalized. How many first ladies is this country going to have? There was that huge debate by capital media that fought Jacob Zuma. So the polarization kept on growing. And before Thabo Mbeki could hand over power in 2009, in 2008, it became to a hit that the ANC management committee decided to recall the president, because they deal with them as what they call deployees. You are deployed in government by the party. That's how powerful they are. And they therefore can recall you in time. So they decided to recall the president. The man that had been elected vice president was Kgalema Motlanthe under the party. And Jacob Zuma, I think, was very wise. He says elections is in 9 months' time. I don't want to look power hungry. So I'm going to let my vice president run the interim period. So Kgalema Motlanthe ran as president for 9 months. He took over power. He was elected by parliament, and he ran as president in a caretaker fashion until May 2009, when they had the elections, and the ANC swept those elections, and Jacob Zuma was elected as president, and he took over. So Kgalema Motlanthe, despite those circumstances, is literally what you would call acting president in our jurisprudence at the time. He is recognized as head of state. If you look at the listings of democratic presidents, they recognize Nelson Mandela, they will recognize Thabo Mbeki, they will recognize Kgalema Motlanthe, and they will recognize Jacob Zuma, and they will recognize Cyril Ramaphosa. So Kgalema Motlanthe is listed among the presidents. Can we recognize Guy Scott as president? I'm drawing similar circumstances. Of course, in the case of Guy Scott, he wasn't sworn in as president because the constitution doesn't allow you to. You are merely acting president, but he was acting president for 90 days. The books recognize, history recognizes Guy Scott as president. White, Zambia's Africa's first white president from a settler community of whites that had settled in our country. So there's a debate there. Others are trying to bring in, what is soiling this debate is other people are trying to bring in the empty grave that lies at Embassy Park. And people remember there's been an issue when the vice president was in a plane crash last week. And some people, spiritual people from both sides said that that empty grave is calling. You have to bury it. You know, in African traditions, when you pronounce someone dead and you dig a grave, and in the end they haven't died, they've woken up, or it was mistaken identity, or whatever it is, that grave, I know kuwemba balatemenkonde mwatemenkonde mwaputula chimuntu chankonde chidia. What do we call it? That that stem of the banana is what you bury the empty grave. Now, state and the state do not practice traditions. State practices statecraft. What do you do with an empty grave? Will it still wait for the late president? So some people are trying to sneak in the fears around the empty grave. They're trying to sneak in the issue of Guy Scott, that he should be buried at Embassy Park in that open grave. I would say, if the debate were, if we were to agree that Guy Scott was president, he was president for 90 days, of course in acting capacity. If we are to agree that because of his stature, he should lie at Embassy Park, I would strongly say he should not be put in the empty grave. His own grave should be dug. But, like Atele Kalumba says, it's not a diminution of the contribution of Guy Scott by recognizing that he was merely vice president. He's one of those unique presidents. For Rupiah Banda, who was also acting president for 90 days, he was privileged to have been elected as president, and he became our fourth Republican president. So the circumstances were changed significantly because the acting president, vice president, Rupiah Banda, when Levi Mwanawasa died, eventually was elected as president. So his role as acting president was overtaken. I don't know what your thoughts are about Guy Scott having acted for a period of 90 days. We treat him as vice president who was acting president, or do we recognize him as president? Of course, the law was very clear. You are vice president, you ought to act as president. In the event that the president dies, the president is incapacitated, and the office becomes vacant. In fact, that is a clause after losing two presidents in Levi Mwanawasa and Michael Sata. That spawned that clause you have of a running mate. The running mate was then chosen, that a running mate should be elected, that in the event of the demise of the president, there should be no this tussle and fresh elections, and no fresh presidential by-election like we had in 2008 and like we had in 2015, that we should, the vice president, if he's elected by the people as running mate, then naturally takes over as president and saves the duration that the demised or the late president could have saved, then go to fresh elections, whether he will run or not, or she will run or not, that becomes another matter. But we avoid the by-elections. So the country learned from the crisis in 2008 when we lost Levi Mwanawasa, and the crisis when we lost Michael Sata in 2014. And in both cases, you are the vice president, take over for a period of 90 days until you go to elections. In the case of Guy Scott, there was a law as Shua stated, that was spawned in 1996, that said you couldn't be president unless you are born in Zambia and both your parents are born in Zambia. This debate emerged when our dear brother Given Lubinda was aspiring to be PF president. He had been an acting president for PF since 2021. And when he aspired for the office, you remember that Davis Mwila and others brought up this issue that, by the way, Given Lubinda was not qualified to stand as Republican president. because of his foreign heritage, because his parents were not born, one of his parents were not born in Zambia. I was the first one to quickly debunk that, and I wrote a piece. I said, that's a trouble with Zambians. They don't even know, even as recent history as the one that took place in 2016, where we amended that clause that was pawned, that prevented Guy Scott to participate in the election as president. That clause that barred Dr. Kaunda in 1996 was repealed in 2016. And senior people didn't seem to be aware. I heard very senior people parrot the allegation that Given Lubinda was not qualified to run as president because one of his parents was not Zambian. That clause was removed. Now all you need to be is a Zambian, born in Zambia. If you can prove that, you can stand as president. The issue of parentage clause was removed, and was actually removed formally earlier in the petition by Akashambatu Ambikusta, who had petitioned Frederick Chiluba, because Akashambatu's petition in 1996 was based on the very clause that said President Kaunda was not qualified because he was, his parents were both of Malawan heritage, and he himself, although born in Zambia, in Chinsali, was not eligible because his parents were of foreign heritage. So Aka became mischievous. A debate ensued. There was a man called Kafupi, and he was paraded in newspapers. He had the stature of the late President Frederick Chiluba, the facial features of President Frederick Chiluba. And he had this wild story. He was Congolese, and he was a Congolese trader. And he said, in my wanderings, I used to come to Mwense, Kawambwa area, and I ended up having a relationship with this woman, Diana, and Chiluba is my son. So it became a huge debate. That became the foundation of Aka's petition to the Supreme Court. Other than the electoral malpractice that he cited, he said Dr. Chiluba was not eligible to be president or as a candidate like Dr. Kaunda, because he said his father, a man who had emerged from nowhere called Kafupi, said he was his father, and he was a Congolese trader. Many people of you will remember that Kafupi story. But of course, Dr. Chiluba said he didn't know the man. A child can't speak for whose father he is, but the elders of the family clearly brought who the father was to Dr. Chiluba, and it wasn't that Kafupi. But it was a ruling in the Supreme Court that was very significant. That ruling, if you examine it, it says there were no Zambians before 1964 because there was no country called Zambia before 1964. So that provision in the Constitution was in itself folly. It meant that everyone born before 1964 were not eligible to stand as president. But again, it brought out this issue that, first of all, the law itself was legally flawed because there was no Zambia before 1964. So you can't say both parents born in Zambia. It meant that only a future generation could then stand as presidents in Zambia, because before 1964, you should study the constitutional court ruling, Supreme Court ruling of 1998, Akashambatu versus Frederick Chiluba, but it was dismissed. And so the issues of parentage, in fact, the Supreme Court stated that if Dr. Kaunda had gone to file, he was eligible to stand because of that very issue. There was no Zambia before 1964. It didn't exist. Or I know there are succession issues when a country changes its name or its legal infrastructure. Were Northern Rhodesia, and before 1890 were undefined. So you should look at that. On Guy Scott, if we remember, many people will tell you about Moto. I was privileged to witness two significant events in our country. I was permanent secretary in Northern Province, and President Michael Sata just called me. He said, go to Mbala twala later echitumbi chabasokulu, you know, those are the words he used. And I said, wakateka, who should I go to Mbala? Yo bashitimukulu wa from UTH. And I remember that, just a minute, this is an important call. Let me just tell them I'm online. Sorry, thank you very much. So it was in April 2012. I was permanent secretary, Northern Province, and you know, Wasata just came online and told me, Mwamba kabiye kumbala, ichitumbi chabasokulu, we are routing it through Mbala. You know how Mr. Sata spoke. Mr. Sata, the people that knew him, he spoke directly. He didn't give background information. Sometimes he assumed you knew. You know, remember when I was telling you the case of Betty Kaunda, when he called me and said, "Muya kuzafa airport ndeke ile milolela kabieni muya mwimbe chindi chawa Betty." I had not heard that Betty Kaunda died. And you know how Mr. Sata would speak? He would speak, what would I say? He spoke the end, the final message. He didn't bother to give you the background. So like here in April 2012, he just told me, Muye kumbala, mrikwi. So I think I was in Kasama and I just knocked off. He says, Muye kumbala, basokuluna bafas. Oh, okay. Okay. So as I began to prepare, he called again. He said, Nalatu mabakalamba. Mr. Kasolo, you know, the man that just turned 100 is the father to Pius Kasolo and the Anton Kasolo. So he said, I'm sending him. You receive him and you'll be with him the entire duration. Badi Fishua. And happy birthday to the old man. He turned, is it 100 or 101? Pius Kasolo's father, you can confirm for me. So he sent I'd learned then that the Chitimukulu, who had been unwell, Axon Chilufia Mwango, who was a paramount chief Chitimukulu, had just died. He had been to Nigeria, had facilitated for his travel various times, and the Zambia Air Force were very good. Every time I called for a plane, they gave it to me and would send him frequently to a hospital in Lusaka, or when he was evacuated. He was the 37th, Chitimukulu. So I was privileged to witness. First, we didn't have to announce. Remember, in the past, when the king died, especially when a royal king like Chitimukulu dies, you are only supposed to announce on the period when you are about to bury, which is 1 year later. But of course, the circumstances have changed. And before I even reached Mbala, word had spread that the Chitimukulu had died. I can't remember who was I think the chief's traditional and chief's affairs minister was Professor Nkandulu, and we liaised, and a formal announcement was done. But I was privileged. I went to Kasama, to Mbala, received the body, and in the night, with a special convoy, we transported the remains traditionally as is required, and we deposited them in Chitimukulu village. There's a way in which they receive the body. They have to begin the embalming process for a period of 1 year, and then you bury the following year. So I received the remains of the late Chitimukulu of Axon Chilufia Mwango through the Zambia Air Force plane. It was a big plane that landed in Mbala. Then we drove from Mbala and, through Seluka, and we finally came to Chitimukulu, and then we deposited the remains with Chimba. But Chimba is a sub-chief that then acts as Chitimukulu every time there's a vacancy in that office. A year later, of course, he was buried. But I was bothering to go to that history because there is a Muzungu who held the similar situation like Guy Scott. So he's called Motomoto. We even have a museum named after him in Mbala. He was a French Catholic father, Father Joseph Dupont. Father Joseph Dupont came in the Bembaland. There was a very famous Chitimukulu at the time. Chitimukulu Sampa Kapalakasha. Kapalakasha. He didn't want the whites that had invaded this area, the slave trade that had been going on. He was a very fierce opponent of the whites, and the whites, the Arabs, were all trying to come through either Mwata Kazembe, the trade routes, through Mporokoso, through Mbara to Tanganyika, through Mpulungu Harbor. So Chitimukulu Sampaka Palakasha was a very fierce warrior and Chitimukulu, and he didn't tolerate nonsense. But Father Joseph Dupont, he was trying to set up, the Catholic mission. This is around 1880 something to 1890. He wormed his way into the Chitimukulu. He was a physician, he was a doctor, and he had skill for local language. Before long, he was at the heart of, Chitimukulu Sampaka Palakasha. If you've been to Chilubula Mission, is the one that set up Chilubula Mission. So he became very close to Chitimukulu Sampaka Palakasha, and also to Senior Chief Mwamba, whose area, the mission, Chilubula Mission, is in. And then something happened. Chitimukulu died in 1896. In the same year, Senior Chief Mwamba died, and there was a vacancy. And, Ilamfia, the Bemba Royal Establishment, the Bemba Council, sat, and there was no dominating figure other than Father Dupont Motomoto, as he was called. And he was made both Senior Chief Mwamba and Chitimukulu. So he acted for, I have to remember the period he acted, but I think for 3 to 4 years, we had to do the succession for Senior Chief Mwamba, then for Chitimukulu, fill those vacancies, then hand over. So I told you that there are 2 scenarios that I witnessed. One, receiving the remains of the late Chitimukulu Waxon Chulufya Mwango in Imbala, and handing the remains to to the people Babenye who deal with those issues, who hold the body and who have to ensure that they put a body to rest for a period of 1 year. They will embalm it, they'll keep it. We had to look for a special beans. I want to ukulima iria beans for embalming. There's a special nice sugary beans. What do we call it? You can comment in the what we call that special beans that we use for embalming. It's a very nice beans to eat, but the soup is very thick and nice. So from the Egyptians to mummify, they use that special beans. We have it, and it's a very nice beans, very small beans. You have to look for it, and sometimes it's grown just for that purpose. And I told you the second succession I witnessed was when we had to install the Archdiocese of Kasama, who is, by Ignatius Chama. So at that installation, so I witnessed the installation of Chitimukulu. He has to be installed as Archbishop of Kasama. And the Archbishop of Kasama, when he's being installed, is also like installed. He goes through a ceremony as if he's being installed as Chitimukulu. So the two have symbiotic relationship, traditional relationship that stretches to over 140 years. To Father Dupont, who held both positions, literally as Bishop of Kasama, Archdiocese of Kasama, that stretched to, I think it was going up to Nyasaland. And he was also Chitimukulu. So witnessing that ceremony of how you install Ignatius Chama how you install the Archbishop of Kasama was very special to me because I learned history. There is no Archbishop in the Catholic Church that enjoys that special installation where they are installed both as Chitimukulu and they are installed as Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Kasama, and vice versa, where the Chitimukulu is installed as Chitimukulu and also goes through the ceremony like he's being installed as Archbishop of Kasama. So mweba ngoni na mpezeni enjoy such right where he's installed as an Archbishop of an Archdiocese. Can mpezeni do that? So there's that special relationship, and you know, that's why institutions like ZANIS should spend time to educate our people in these rich traditions. So we had Father Dupont, who's recognized as Chitimukulu in our Bemba royal establishment because he held that position of Chitimukulu in the interim period. Like Guy Scott held the position of president for that period of 90 days, a white man for that matter, from a settler family. And I thought I could tell you that story. When I come back, I'll tell you now my relationship with Guy Scott. Then we transition. I showed you a picture where Brian Mundule's convoy was tear gas, heavily tear gas today by the misconduct of the police. The boys, as President Hakainde Hichilema calls them, are in Lusaka and they should be allowed free reign. They've had rallies. Today they decided to do an awareness roadshow before they hold the last big rally in Lusaka, and I'll tell you when it's coming up. So before I go to that, I'll tell you my relationship with Guy Scott, and then I'll open the phone lines after that.
Visuzio mumanyumba Jala pamuzi Tieni tibafu.
Thank you very much. Someone has told me, yes, it's cowpeas, that special beans I was telling you. Beautiful, very delicious beans. It's called cowpeas. Ilanda. Ilanda. Abantu badeko kulima. I remember having difficulties to look for it because we had to look for it to dispatch a vehicle, to Mbala, to Kaputa and to Nakonde had to disperse the disease to look for that Ilanda, because people have not been growing it. They grow the sugar beans and the other beans. So Ilanda, yes, that beans is very special. It goes back to what pharaohs are buried and are embalmed in, that old technology. So you'd need that Ilanda. So share the broadcast as we go to speak more about Guy Scott. For me, Guy Scott, I started interacting with him when there was a fight. First, the relationship was very, very good. When I joined President Frederick Chiluba in 2002, he was a troubled man. I told you the story that he would usually just be with his wife, his lawyers, or one of the pastors. He had been deserted. There was this concerted effort to isolate and fight him, similar to what President Edgar Lungu went through. His assets were frozen. His assets everywhere were being grabbed. He was embarrassed. It was a very difficult period. But when I joined him, one of the immediate issues I told him, said, Mr. President, the fight you have is not a legal issue. It's not a spiritual issue. It is all that. Because I see you sit with lawyers all the time. You are sitting with your pastors all the time. And of course, most of the times, you're just with your wife, Mama Regina Chifunda Chiluba. This fight is a political fight. And we need to bring the political weight to it. I've told the story where he says his first choice was General Godfrey Mianda, who was his vice president. He says he was born again like me. And I think he will understand. I know we are coming from a fractious period, because General Mianda, if you remember the 2001 elections, split the MMD. Two parties were born, FDD and Heritage Party. So I went to see General Mianda, who said, I can't see that man for now. If you want to send them Zamtrop and all other things, I'm learning them now. Yes, I was his vice president between 1994 to 1997, I think, yeah. Until after the coup, then General Tembo came in. So he says, no, I can't see the man. So I went back to Dr. Chiluba. Sir, the political force that you think should come to help you, I went to see General Mianda. He says he's too busy with first a presidential petition against Levi Mwanawasa, and I think he still has challenges of how the two of you parted, So he says, I think, okay, then go to General Tembo. He was also my past vice president. Yeah, he's FDD leader. Go and see him. So I began to look for General Tembo, who was FDD president, because we needed to enjoin Dr. Chiluba. It was a political fight, what he was going through, corruption allegations, being scandalized, being arrested, being isolated, all the people around him being removed, was a political fight. So I'd advised that he needed a political force. So before we could go to look for General Christian Tembo, there was a beaming headline in all newspapers the following day, because on the tarmac of the airport, President Levi Mwanawasa was going to Ndola, and he disclosed, I think a day before, General Tembo had issued a scathing statement against Levi Mwanawasa. So Levi Mwanawasa, you know how he was. He says, this man, he is attacking me, but he came to see me, has been coming to see me, and he wants me to pay the bills of FDD, then he will come over to us and he will forward the FDD. So I said, sir, that's such a man would be a liability to bring to the politics. Because, look, the overtures that he's been making to the president, I think are not good. Then I said, Mr. President, why don't you see Mr. Michael Sat? So Dr. Chiluba laughed. He says, but is it taken seriously? He used the words with all the buffoonery. I said, Mr. President, I think that is your man. He says, okay, come on in. I went to see President Michael Sata. This is 2002. And I was at his office at Farmer's House at 10:30, 11 hours. I saw him. Before I could even explain, you know how Sata was. Karishanka Sokuru. Yes, because Mwanawasa has raised a fight against Bembas. We've heard that he says Bembas should not rule in the next 30 years. This man is very tribal. He was given an opportunity because he came from another tribe other than Chiluba fractured his relationship with people that should have been in the succession line. This man was not even in the succession line. And, he's already waging. He's very immoral. He already had an answer. And by 14 hours, Guy Scott and Michael Sata came to see President Frederick Chiluba. And President Michael Sata had one MP from Lupososh, Emmanuel Mpankata Musonda. One MP. From that day when they began to work together, I remember the first by-election we participated in was the Kembe by-election. Lakson Mapushi was the Home Affairs Minister, died in a freak accident, some very funny accident. And there was even an embarrassing report that he didn't possess either a driver's license or he didn't possess a government driver's license. It's not enough for you to have a driver's license. You also need a government regulated license. And so the PF participated in that by-election with full force. Dr. Chiluba summoning his old loyalties in party structures, party people, chiefs, resources. Shikapwasha had just defected from, I think, the Heritage Party to join Mwanawasa, Bantu Botatwe politics. And he decided to join Levi Mwanawasa. So when Lakson Mapushi died, they appointed as a presidential candidate, as a candidate, Ronnie Shikapwasha, the former ZAF commander. So that was the first election that I participated in with the PF and with President Chiluba, now working with Michael Sata. There was a by-election, I think it's in Muflira, where we became the first by-election that we beat the MMD. And remember, the dominant parties at the time was UPND, Anderson Mazoka, who was pursuing a matter in court, the presidential petition, and he had 49 MPs. Sata had 1 MP, Heritage Party Bamianda had 4 MPs, FDD had 12 MPs, and MMD was trying to consolidate. Levi Mwanawasa had won with a razor-thin margin, and there was now that huge fight against President Frederick Chiluba, who was president. He was forced out of the position. They installed Levi Mwanawasa as MMD president, displacing the president and also making Regina resign. She was chairperson of Women's Affairs. So the war was on. And Dr. Chiluba spent time meeting Michael Sata and Guy Scott very often. And you all know by 2006, that party became the largest political party, literally the largest opposition political party. Mr. Sata won with 42 seats. He displaced the UPND that had gone into that election as a huge alliance called UDA. They had gone as UPND, UNIP, and FDD. And they came up only with 24 seats. Sata nearly swept that election. We understand he actually won that election, but he had 42 MPs and a commanding presidential vote, and he took over councils in Lusaka and the Copper Belt. So that is a period that I began to interact with Guy Scott. So in 2008, there was that by-election. Levi Mwanawasa died, Rupia Banda took over, and President Frederick Chiluba switched support from the PF, which he had spent building for 8 years. He abandoned it and he went with Rupia Banda. So if you remember, from 2008 to 2011, President Frederick Chiluba worked with Rupia Banda. So that is where now we would interact very often, because I'll go to the radio program and my counter will either be Winter Kabimba, Given Luvinda, or Guy Scott on the other side. And I'll be speaking for Dr. Chiluba on corruption issues, corruption allegations. Remember, Dr. Chiluba was acquitted and there was a huge issue. First, the 2007 ruling in the London court against Dr. Chiluba, it spawned a huge local and international debate, and I had to frequently go to TV and radio stations to defend the side of Dr. Chiluba against the London judgment. And to my counter in all those debates would be, any other person other than, there was even one time that I was with the task force chairperson on one, not Mark Chona, but the one who succeeded Max Nkole. We met on TV and radio station very often. So I would meet with Guy Scott. So that was my relationship then. Then in 2011, as you know, Mr. Sata appointed me as permanent secretary for Northern Province. So we began to interact. But things came to a head. When I was Western Province permanent secretary, I've released some pictures. I was privileged to be with him on the Nalikwanda with the Litunga. Mr. Sata didn't come, he dispatched Guy Scott. So we hosted the vice president. I was with him on the Nalikwanda, when he's doing the Kwomboka ceremony. It's a special opportunity. There are very few people that can say they've been on the Nalikwanda. I was on the Nalikwanda with the vice president. I was also on the, I attended other ceremonies like the Kufuluhela, where the Litunga returns back, and that rare privilege. But we had by-elections in Mlowezi and in Mitete district. Mitete is so rural, it closes for a period of 6 months. People don't go to school, and you would have them sit for the same exams. When they miss school half the year, they can only go to school in a period of 6 months. And Mitete district has special needs. And my partner in there was Bishop Chinyemba. Historically comes from there. So he was very passionate about Mitete districts and its upliftment. So it was, the work had been made very easy to both the Litunga and to Bishop Chinyemba when Mitete was declared as a district and we began to build new infrastructure. And to understand the special, can you imagine schools that close because of the floods in the area? There is a famous, like I said, institutions like Zanis should take time to teach our people this history. Luanginga River is one of the deepest rivers in Africa. It's a major tributary to the Zambezi River. So it rises from Angola, it comes into Western Province through Lukulu and Mitete. So it floods the Mitete districts and Mitete becomes dislocated for a period of almost 6 months. And Luanginga River, if you don't know about it, is one of the deepest rivers in the world. And I think it's the deepest river in Africa. You can go in the comments for me. So it's around, and it's a major tributary because of the volume of water that it brings to the Zambezi in the area. So there are special needs around Lukulu and around Mitete. So there was a by-election in Mitete, and Dr. Guy Scott and myself would go there very frequently. Then in Mlowezi. And then his wife, Charlotte, had special interest with the Lewanika General Hospital, where they had purposed and brought a special eye hospital. In the comments for people that are in Western Province, you can tell me. But when we installed the facilities, and thanks to Mama Charlotte Scott with her partners, that eye hospital became the best in Southern Africa. It was only comparable to the other one that was in Kenya, Nairobi. I don't know if the standards are the same. maybe the dilapidation of equipment. I don't know how that eye hospital that was set up in collaboration with partners, of course, government, but I remember Madam Charlotte Scott paid particular attention. Remember, she comes from development institutions, and she had that keen eye. She even came and helped us build a shelter at Lewanika General Hospital. Things came to hit when I was brought in as Permanent Secretary, Minister of Information. At the time, there was a huge war between Winter Kavimba, who was the Justice Minister, and who was Secretary General of the party. I think they were aware that the late President Michael Sata was not well. Because for me, I didn't understand how people were engaged in succession dispute. When you have a living president, can you imagine you are president, people are fighting for your position? And so there was one on one side, GBM, Geoffrey Waliamwamba, who was defense minister. And on the other side, there was Winter Kavimba. And the two had very strong factions. Edgar Lungu was on the faction of GBM. Winter Kavimba, Emmanuel Chenda, Guy Scott were on this side. And both Fred Membe, both forces were determined to make their candidates president. And I was caught in that crisis. So when I was appointed as PS information, Mr. Sata gave me clear directives. And he gave me a political assignment. He said, Ramwamba, in Nama Powers Yandi, I don't know, I'm being fought. They've polarized my government. Help bridge that gap. I said, so I said, look, I'm going to refocus, I think, government information on development. So if you remember, my first call was that instead of having government fight the Zambian watchdog at the time that was fighting Michael Sata, calling him all sorts of, or the UPND, I began to shepherd the public media to discuss development. I introduced Zanis News on ZNBC. You know, we bought equipment for Zanis. We began the process to give them fresh equipment across all provinces. And remember, there was this project that was being done, the digital migration that was being done. I cancelled that project and re-advertised it so that it could be done properly. And I wanted all provincial studios. I thought that the Zanis should be revived to standards where it can have even provincial TV and radio stations communicating government. I'm always a big mover that government information must dominate, you know, narrative, development issues, productive issues, because you have a media that spends time discussing who has the largest nose, who has the largest forehead, who has the widest lips, who has what, who is short, who is bald, who is tall. That is a debate of our country. And what goes missing there is narrative about the development of our country. So I tried in my way, but I was caught up. I remember one of the issues that brought a serious crisis for me, just a week in office, was that I learned, because remember I was in Mongo, I was PS Western Province. When I coming to the office, there were stones and town was closed, banks were closed. I said, what is happening? Atawe. Chikwelete from Chawama. He was, I think, one of the Chawama constituents chairperson, and was very strong supporter for Edgar Lungu and GBM. He said, when Chikwelete, they are marching in town, they've closed town. So I came to the office, and on ZNBC there was no news. There was no news, not on Radio Phoenix, not on any private media. The protests were against Winter Kavimba and, you know, the issues that the party had against him. So I remember summoning the media heads. What are you doing? You have protests in town. Of course, by your own party cadres. But banks are closed. The town has come to a standstill. Minibuses can't go in. And I'm told this has been going on for the last 3 days. And there is no single report, even on social media. People began, the media heads, began to whisper to me, Ambassador, I think you may need to know what's happening here. You cannot write against Winter Kavimba. We'll lose our jobs. He's so strong. He's like the de facto head of state. I said, what? What nonsense is that? Town is closed, business has been disturbed, and no one will write about it. Kabieni. At 19 hours, I'll be watching the news. I want that item there. And for the first time, the images were shown. I think that was an immediate fracture in the infallibility that Winter Kavimba had built and his system and his powerful people, supported by the Vice President, Guy Scott. I said, news is news. Be driven by news. Don't be driven by party politics. How will the police act if there is no public pressure? If there are protests against Winter Kavimba in town, maybe how will even the president know? How will government respond to such a disruptive, maybe it could even be a lawless process, if all of you have collaborated to hide the information? You can imagine how powerful Winter was, that protests gone on for many days, shutting down town, Kamwala, and there was no whimper of a simple report in the media. I said, what nonsense is this? I want this in the media. That is the only way government can act. That is the only way the party can be put into light to deal with the issue. And I think that's when you saw for the first time those reports in public media, and then they just burst. And then, as we say, the rest is history. I can discuss those matters. I do see that Winter Kavimba does often touch them, but they will require a special broadcast. So it is during that period that the Vice President called me and blasted me that I was embarrassing a minister, Justice Minister, an appointee of the President. I said, first of all, Vice President, because remember, I knew him, and when he was in opposition, would meet at radio stations. We had a relationship. And before that, when we were building the PF, again, I knew him very well. So there was that rapport I had with him, even if it was a boss senior relationship, but I could speak back to him. Said, Wakateka, Vice President, first, London, have a minister, have a minister on top. The minister will speak to me. Two, for me, there are what we call news values, news judgments. What is news? I cannot have the entire town shut down and there are protests against Winter and no one is reporting about it. Town has been disrupted. Minibuses can't go there for 3 hours. Normal is only restored sometimes after 4 hours. I says, no. For me, that is news. And you have to allow the media. Of course, the other run-ins with the Vice President. I remember one time, Winter writing a scathing letter against me and pledging that between Winter, Guy Scott, and myself, that Mr. Sata was eventually going to choose it too, and I was going to be fired. And the Vice President called me, Anton Mukwita, in the Daily Mail had written some very, very strong story against Winter. He had covered nine district commissioners that had from Western Province that had a meeting with Winter, and they exposed that meeting. Oh, Winter was very annoyed. He was blazing, threatening to have me dismissed, and Anton Mukwita. So the Vice President called us in his quarters, for leader of government in Parliament. We went to his office, and he showed me the letter written by Winter. And he warned me, Emmanuel, you're going to be fired. Mr. Sata will fire you. He loves you, yes. But between Mr. Sata and myself, he's going to choose me, not you. I'm just doing my job. I want editorial independence for my public media. I do not want this interference where ministers choose, where you, Vice President, you have a special reporter you want to be covered. No. That is an editorial decision. It requires editorial independence. Mr. Vice President, if you are going anywhere, it is not you to appoint a reporter to escort you. The editor at ZNBC will allocate a reporter to you. They know best and they know their best resources. And if you have trouble with that, for me, there's, nothing I can do. I just want to professionalize the media. It's been polarized. Each minister has his own reporters. Each minister has his own favorite reporters. And just a week later, at this request, Winter had chosen a number of journalists from Daily Mail, ZNBC. He had some party function that he wanted to deal with in Panama. And so he directed the media heads that he wanted these special reporters that he was working with from ZNBC, Times, Daily Mail, and Zanis. So when the request came, because in the end, administratively, it has to be done by the PS information. So I looked at the request. I ignored it for 1 week. First, there was no need, there was no money. Number two, it was a party function. It wasn't even a government function. Winter, had registered the PF into these political alliances, and there was a big conference going on in Panama, and he wanted all these media people to escort him. So I said it isn't going to happen. Priority-wise, it was a party affair. It wasn't even government. If he was going for government, I said he would go. But Winter was so confident of his powers. He turned up and he had no reporters at the airport. Oh, my minister called. Minister, varetutuma wamba chinshuwachita iwe mwana wandi chinshuwachita wintoku nakalipa jela minister tapale fionchitile. I think the media is not available for those roles. The media is very busy, and like I said, editorial independence. I want ZNBC, Zanis, Times, and Daily Mail to make their own decisions. You cannot have these special reporters, favored by ministers. That's why they don't respect hierarchy. That's why there's no professionalism, because you can't even touch them. They are so powerful. Yeah, okay, the lines are open. We are discussing Guy Scott. But before I go to Guy Scott, we touch a few things around the campaigns. Then I open the phone lines. Thank you very much. There's a last part that I just need to speak to before I open the phone lines on Dr. Guy Scott, his historical role as acting president. I used to tell my senior colleagues that when I became and learned of the demise of the late president, because it had become public by then, And there were people jostling for those positions. And I used to tell people that the person who will act is Vice President Guy Scott. They said, no, act from 2011, it will be immoral for him. I said, it's not an issue of immorality. It's an issue of legality. Vice President Guy Scott will act as president. Yes, GBM has been acting as acting president. Bach Kwanda has been acting as president. And frequently, the person who acted the most was Edgar Lungu. And occasionally, one time before his dismissal, Winter Kabimba acted when the president, I think, went to the UN. He acted as acting president. But I used to tell everyone, I actually even wrote about it, that the person who would act as president will be Guy Scott, because that's what the law stipulates. And you know, there were circumstances. Winter Kabimba was fired. Honorable Edgar Lungu, as Minister of Home Affairs, was appointed Justice Minister. He called me to work with him because he was also appointed as Secretary General of the party. So he said I needed to help. I'd worked with him very well. I've told the story how he was instrumental in recommending me from PS Western Province and to take me to Ministry of Information. So we were working, trying to reorganize the party. And Edgar Lungu was Justice Minister, he was Defense Minister, and he would be acting president frequently. And that day, the late president died. He was the one that was acting president. And we are just being, me, Anthony, Mukwita, Kaiser Zulu, and I think Bernard Decker, we are just being to the to the acting president's home in Lewanika. And we had been with him when we dispersed before midnight. As we were driving out from Lewanika Close, you know, Lewanika Close on Brentwood Drive, before you come to State House, as I was just driving out, I received a call from Mlengasata, who was in London, and he told me, Wamwamba, President Wafwa. Now, the reason he was calling me, he said, I know that there's going to be a crisis. You and I have discussed this matter. There are people that are saying the acting president will act as president in the interim, but you have held a very serious position that the president, the vice president, who's Guy Scott, who's never acted as president, will be legally as president. And there was a thing that played out that night, where now we had 2 co-ministers. Acting president was Edgar Lungu. But there was this crisis. Already Guy Scott was calling commanders, was calling people that he will be the acting president. So there was that legal tussle that night that the late president died. And I was there the entire time, to the time they had the cabinet, because we had to do 2 things: announce the demise of the late president and also designate who will act as president. Sishua talked about it. I don't want to go in depth. It's something I personally experienced, and I would like to, you know, it's something that is good for the books because it's extremely detailed. But in the end, Edgar Lungu said, "Mwantu wakwalesa, if tefyakuluila, let's not fight about it. And I'm a lawyer. If the constitution says Guy Scott will act, even if the president never made him acting president in his entire life, I'll let him act as president. Besides, I'm Minister of Defense and Minister of Justice, and I'm also Secretary General of the party. He could be acting president, but politically, and you know, what will happen is nothing you should worry about." And that morning, that's why you saw the acting president didn't announce the demise of the late president. It was Roland Musiska, the Secretary to Cabinet. The statement I had written was now read not by Honorable Edgar Lungu, but it was read by Secretary to Cabinet, because there was that vacuum that had to be filled between the transition between Edgar Lungu and Guy Scott and the 2 cabinet meetings that were held. Musa Mwenye has talked about it. Sishua Shua has talked about it. I was personally there. Let's go to the boys. They had a rally in Luangwa. They had the rally, very big rally in a small area like Luangwa. They had the big rally, you know, in Chongwe, one that was held in the night. It was such a moving rally. And then you have seen that curfew and Chilanga held in the night. Today they were doing drive-through. And what we saw was unfortunate, where the police discharged heavy tear gas, canisters on them. This is total lawlessness coming from the police. Total lawlessness. The ECZ calendar has designated them to be in Lusaka province during this period. And it's just illegal for the police. They are disturbing public peace for them to attempt to stop. Besides the rallies, they are drumming up support for the major last rally they are going to have in Lusaka. And they decided to have a drive-through shows. And the police came heavily armed and tried to disturb. But Lusaka, wherever they passed, received them in huge numbers with hooters, and places were becoming on standstill. I was just reading something that Bernadette Decker, who's an independent candidate for Chongwe West, says she has just met a convoy on Leopard's Hill Road, and she says she has seen many presidential convoys, but she's never seen what she saw today. So there is a mood in the country that is favoring the boys. President Hakainde Hichilema is fighting back. Is now in the strongholds of the where the two boys have been. Today he held one of the big rallies in Chilubi and Kaputa. Kaputa, that's where the vice president comes from, and Elvis Nkandu. And remember, there is a ban against the NRPUP from holding any rally in Kaputa. If you have seen any from nomination period, the movement in Kaputa has been very big. So you can see how Elvis Nkandu was invested in the rally in Kaputa to quash the feelings that Kaputa has rejected both Whitney Kapembwa, Mutale Nalumango, and Elvis Nkandu, the two powerful people from the north who are in the UPND. So today, President Hakainde Hichilema held a very big rally in Kaputa, of course, to attempt to quash that little rebellion that has risen against that party, the UPND, against Elvis Nkandu and Mutale Nalumango, to attempt to create a perception that they remain strong. And I'll look for the video and show you. But like I'm saying, all the rallies held by the president, everyone is wearing red, school uniform. It's like he's speaking to his own choir. And the boys are privileged that every rally they have, no regalia, no transport, no nothing, and masses are coming to them. There is clearly a mood in the country. Someone says, I speak about the picture of Guy Scott's father. Who was Guy Scott's father? Yeah, I told you that he was the first, he's among those white settlers that supported Kaunda and Harry Mwanga Nkumbula. And in this picture, there's Guy Scott's father, Alex Scott. On the left, you can see him. Let me just look at the picture and tell you who's in the picture, just to remind you that Guy Scott has contributed a lot from his father to himself. The contribution to this country is so much. So if you look on the left, is Dr. Alec and Mrs. Scott. The two are Guy Scott's parents. This picture was taken in 1953 with African nationalists. So there is then Harry Mwanga Nkumbula, if you can see, is the one standing. There is His Royal Highness Chief Lishumi Namahalika Musokotwane. There is Chief Lishumi Namahalika Musokotwane. Then there is Dr. Hastings Kamuzu Banda, the person who became life president for Malawi. Then there is Lawrence Chola Katilungu, Avena Luingu, the one that founded, Z-City Youth, trade unionist. He's with Mbiku Stalewanika, Aka's father. The two founded the first trade union in Zambia, and they were also instrumental in founding the first political party in Zambia, the African National Congress. So in 1953 there, you see Lawrence Chola Katilungu. They had traveled to London. You see Dr. Kamuzu Banda, because a federation had just been declared, amalgamating the three countries, Southern Rhodesia, Northern Rhodesia, and Nyasaland as one federal state, one federated state. So there was an uprising by Africans that we are independent states defined as such. The British are amalgamating. For them it was efficiency and administration, because they wanted the capital to be in Salisbury and labor to come from Malawi, which was an agriculture area, and the mines were on the copper belt in Zambia, in northern Rhodesia. So administratively, they wanted to run these colonial entities in an efficient manner. That became a sore point and triggered a strong liberation movement, because now we're not just fighting for our own liberation, but we're also fighting against the federation, until the Moncton Commission was held, that then determined that the three countries have to be separated, and we reverted 10 years later to where the federation was cancelled. Northern Rhodesia had its first election, and Kaunda and UNIP did very well with ANC, and Kaunda became part of government with his best friend Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe, was local government minister. And Dr. Kaunda was, what was his position before he became prime minister, but he eventually became prime minister. And we never had elections in 1964. Literally, it was just a transition arising from the elections that were held in 1963 after the federation was abolished and the three countries became separate states once again. Okay, so the lines are open. So let me hear from you if you have any views about the campaigns, the ongoing campaigns about Guy Scott. We're remembering Guy Scott today. And I was posing a question, how do we remember him? And I've given you the narration of Father Dupont, who was both Bishop of Kasama and also became the Chitimukulu, Senior Chief Mwamba. He held those positions on Chitimukulu. To date, we remember him. The only white Chitimukulu we've had in the history of the Bemba people. Guy Scott was like that. Then I gave you the scenario in South Africa of the interim president for 9 months. So the lines are open now. You can call. Sorry, I kept on cutting those that were calling. Now you can call. Let's hear from you. Let's hear from you. Let's hear from you. The lines are open. Let me just switch on the phone. Sorry, the phone was off. But if you know my other line that usually people call on, you can call. I think we have our first caller. What is that phone that's ringing? We have our first caller. Okay. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Emmanuel, this is your colleague, Kafrimbi.
My dear brother, make your contribution.
Let me reduce this. Okay. Yes. Dr. Scott. Dr. Scott, I'll always call him a black man in a white man's suit. Because if someone has talked for us Africans, it is Dr. Scott. But he was an African, as far as he believed. he was a pure African. And despite his race, all we can do is pray for his family and say thanks to him. And we give him, oh my God, and you put this photo of him. That's very hurtful by Mwamba, what you have done. Yes, this man, he's fought for us. You've worked closely with him before. You know his mentality. He's a man that has always stood for us. And I don't think I have much more to say, but all I can say is thank you and go well, Dr. Guy Scott. And then the last thing I want to say is that I'm very grateful to you as well for spotting you with a white beard. I don't know where it has come from, because you always seem black. And from nowhere, you've got a white beard. So thank you, Bamwamba. Thank you. God bless you as well.
Thank you very much. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
My name is Habenzu Haloka. First and foremost, I want to say my condolences to the family of the Guy Scott. I'm a UPND supporter, and I've supported the HH wholeheartedly. There's no any party that I've ever supported. I've been a member of UPND since then, but I can tell you that at one time I was arrested, I was in prison, and first of all, sorry that I'm going to speak something that is totally different from your today's program, but I'm also a regular listener of this program. Let me go back to my story. I was arrested and I was in prison with a certain charges that I don't want to disclose. While I was serving, HH is in opposition. We met, and these people who were co-charged. And during that time, we interacted several times, and the groups were made. Remember, on this platform, I am calling with full, with goodness on my heart. It's up to you how you are going to relate this conversation. Remember, as of 2 weeks ago, when the campaigns were now fully charged, we saw how the opposition has been running and trying. That's when a big cloth came out from our faces, even including the face of the president, that indeed we have the opposition. But the plans of the oppositions are not good at all. As of last week, remember, we had a meeting of trying to eliminate the both Makebi and the Mundurile. It is at that time that I decided that I should move out from this group. The plans of the current regime of UPND has got no good at all for this country, but is to put anarchy. So when you see the police officers doing what they're doing, it is nothing but trying to bring confusion. Indeed, there is a group of people among ourselves. That's why I said I started with the prison, because the prison is where a group was formed to attack and to arm. This is the topic of another day, but I want to tell you that the people, even those who are doing a lot of danger, they were coming from the prisons in line with the current commissioner, the Deputy Commissioner of Prison General. That's why there was that promotion from the sergeant to that level, because the idea was if somebody comes out from prison, go and do all kind of dirty job outside and go back in the evening in the prison. That's what was happening. And now as we speak, and some of the guys in prison, they were from Tanzania, the foreigners. And if foreigners would come in this country and cause havoc, because they have nowhere, they have nothing to lose, they are coming from other countries. So I want to tell the nation at this hour that when we talk about confusion and violence, my heart bleeds and I regret everything that has happened before and what is about to be happening. I cannot lose my country for the politics. And I've decided to call this program with a heavy heart because our intention in this organization or the party, it is not good at all. Mamba, I say this with a heavy heart, with a lot of regret. Lisoniso means what he means. He is able to kill, he is able to do everything. But I have decided to come out. If today I was to die, this will be the reason I will die for. Because I've come out very strong and condemned. I may not go to the ZSBC, I may not, but I've decided to go on this program. If there's anything you want to ask me, you can, but I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Some revelations there, but I'll discuss them later when people make revelations like that on my program. Hello, caller, please tell us your name. Hello, please, caller, tell us your name. Oh, line is cut. Line is cut. Please call. The lines are now open. The lines are now open. Call. Someone is saying the other line is not going through. Come on, is not? Isn't it? Let's see. Let me try it. That gentleman is making some revelations that sinister plans against Makebi and Munduwile. We pray for their safety. Zambia is a democratic state and we do not have to lose any lives. All we want, the people of Zambia just want change and they should be supported in their decision. They just want to have a free and democratic election. Hello, caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
No, we are very grateful to have you today on the EMV. Bamwamba inende lomba kuti ndande gopa fintu fimwe festika mu Zambia. I will just go straight. Ubushikufuire nsofu neli ashi mumushiri ba muri ansofu. Ngatuleyibukisha amakampeni bayisize tabene takwaliwo abatungirire balipangire election campaign timetable which they are allocated to every political party that participate in this election. Balanga kulanda tiba president akainde ichire mabena bakulaenda fichi. Ngefu twachimuna wa president akainde ichire mabachi ba ku Northern Province kwa Kaputa na kuchirubi na konse. Nomba ine chonde fo kwishiba kufye. Balaba police bachikonka ba Balande Munduwile. Ilio the timetable is talking about Balande Munduwile from province, Lusaka province. Bachi amukushite finish. Ama Zambianzi tuishive kwali baba bumi munda abantu bamo baleyilanga pamenso kwati bantunsi uyu president twakwata te muntu musuma nale sta campaign kwa Kaputa kuchirubi kuisa konse kulo kwachiba balaba polisi bakonka ba Balande Munduwile na Makebi Zulu mwakalingalinga balisha matia gas na ma life bullet katwishinga bachifo kwipa ya Balande Munduwile nga ni Makebi pabache no mwana ala ubutungulushi takwa bogusuwa mulopa ifufwe na Zambia twalisala inshila ya kusalila mo intungulushi ma election Bakainde ichilema balima paswe kati balibomba nga balibomba bakainde ba ichilema balolele amazambians to judge amazambian emajaji abala judge nga bakainde efyo babomba kuchile efyo balechita and two ndefo kuchita piu kuma opposition problem tukweta ma opposition bambi bali bebele ko batiseni pamo tamukwete capacity yakuya imomweka tabale umfwa beshi bokweba ati amazambi necho balefu afye ukweba ati chalo chilubulwe andi bosa amazambi ntwikale pamo andi chimbiwa mwambeto ndefo kushitaeko nilya statement ya Landile Muhabi Lungu pa Prime TV baka inde ichilema baleke ilia kweba ati nga bali kuma region yambi bale bebo kweba ati yo aba hukumwika basala aba fumo kumwika basala nga mwa basala mukaya ku intercity bakala miuma elomba nga baya ku northern region na ku northern block bale punda one Zambia one nation baka inde ichilema nga bali upa ba mutinto bafuna ku mushikumo ama Zambia ntwali upana kale bakaonde bali upana na kuchipata bakalunda bali upana na batonga bakalubale bali upana na babemba so bakainde ichilema ilya behavior bakwata ilya iya kulanga sugar coating amazambian kwati na bachenjera tafya abafwe iyo amazambian bali upa ilya kwebati ngaba kuzambezi region bakainde ichilema is trying to preach a different a message nga ku northern block before ku stop preach one Zambia one nation baka inde ichile mama Zambians bali bapere 5 years ukuthi nimo ba president bombeni so baka inde ichile ma balande fe uma Zambia nesho ba bombele nesho chilalenga kwete mazambia ne baka bawe shape vimbi. That is very important. I just want to echo batonse na bapamozi ama election ba isizeti bali panga timetable bakainde ichile mara ista campaign uko na batonse bafule bashita campaign takulifya kweba tikuli national morning tatwa bebele ba isizeti bapange timetable ba isizeti ba electoral commission of Zambia bebe abena Zambia kweba tinga twashita stop ama election who's going to compensate the time for other political party bakainde ichile is not special. They are in the competition of election, so that Kamena Zambia bakasali. Takulisha kwa watu waka inde wene shita kampeni kulia. Elo bambibambo kubashupa kulu police. Ba police wa stefe bievu jichalo. Chalo na Zambia. Watekanye. I submit.
Thank you very much. Today we are discussing the late President, Dr. Guy Scott, and someone has brought up this important issue. What happens in this period of national mourning? Do you suspend the period of campaigns? What happens? I don't know what will be decided, but it's very important that for the opposition, every time you hold any rally, any meetings, during this period, just remember Dr. Guy Scott, offer your condolences and observe a minute of silence. Besides, we are still mourning the late President, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. We still haven't put him to rest. So, yet we are in full gear and full campaigns. And here is another matter. Again, we are campaigning while we have the former Vice President who has died. It could be the nature of our politics, but for the leaders, I would urge that they pay due respect. If they have to proceed with their meetings, they have to recognize right at the beginning of their program to remember Dr. Guy Scott in these 5 days. Like the caller has feared, as we have seen, President Hakainde Hichilema today had 2 rallies, one in Chilubi and one in Kaputa. If you have to go by road, it will take you the whole days, up to 8 hours. First of all, the road from Chilubi, Chiaba, Mporokoso, Luingu to Action Porokoso, then, to the constituency we call Chimbamilonga in Nsama district. Then from Chimbamilonga there in Nsama district to Kaputa, oh my God, the road is to Nsumbu to Kaputa, the road is so bad. If you have to use the Kawambwa Mansa Mwense route to go through Chiengi and you go to Kaputa again, it will take you the whole day. Only President Hakainde Hichilema would benefit from this process if campaigns are suspended. Only President Hakainde Hichilema. He has got the infrastructure, like he did. A matter that would require 8 to 10 hours to traverse. He held a rally in Chilubi and hopped into Kaputa because he's flying. He's got ZAF helicopters, and this team and entourage can do that. The opposition cannot. If we have to observe this period of national mourning for 5 days and campaigns are suspended, the only people that will be hurt will be the opposition. And like the caller has stated, who will compensate for this 5-day period? As you have seen, we are remaining with only 27 days. And in the period of almost 3 weeks, the boys have only done 4 provinces: Eastern, Muchinga, Northern, Luapula, and the other day they started Lusaka province. They are yet to deal with Central Province, Copperbelt, Northwestern Province, Western Province, and Southern Province. A huge undertaking. But what do you think? What are your views? You can tell me in the comment, or the lines are open, you can call. You can call. I think someone is calling now. The phone is now working. The one you were saying is not going through. It is working. I've seen some calls are coming through. You can call using this number. The calls are coming through. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contributions.
Hello, good evening, Ambassador.
Good evening.
This is Bovita from Kafewa.
Mr. Muita, make your contribution.
First and foremost, I would like to pay my condolences to the Guy Scott's family. May his soul rest in peace. I can remember Guy Scott also. In my case, I remember Guy Scott also when he was Minister of Agriculture, something like that. Then in the next item is, I would just like to urge the police. I don't know why they could discharge tear gas, and if anything, that could be the other thing. I think it was even a bullet, live ammunition, which wounded the child there. I don't know why the police could behave like that when they know that this Lusaka has been designated for the Tose Alliance to campaign. I don't know why they could discharge ammunition where there are a lot of people like that. I would urge the police really to act professionally. It's not good to be acting like this in this time of campaign. That was very bad, actually. I saw the video. I was really sad. I was very sad to see such a thing. Ambassador, I think I would like to end here for now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please call. We are closing on top of the hour. Did your team win? Did your team win in the World Cup rounds? Who were you supporting yesterday between Argentina and England? Were you supporting Argentina and Lionel Messi, or were you with Kane and the British? Who do you think will win the match between Spain and Argentina? They play this similar kind of football. Spanish football is similar. It will be a good final, but who do you think it favors? So all of us have been busy with the football matches and, watching the matches. So please call so that we stop at the hour I don't want when I'm about to close and you begin to scramble to call. Please call right now. Someone says you've sent voice notes. Yeah. For not reading my voice notes. It's something we have to learn probably to say we play your voice notes. But please call. We want your live. Sometimes I have a way in which I interrogate the caller, like the caller who called alerting us that there are plots and schemes against Makebi Zulu and Brian Mundwe. Those schemes will go nowhere. Zambia is a Christian nation, it's a democratic state, and we just warn those people doing those illegal things. Hello, caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contributions.
Good evening, Mama.
Good evening.
Mwamba, ine champa pushako. Aba wewa mushka ya kampeni kulishe mfuti ni bani. Sensi yonipi. Atuwa mwana kwa bafuni na pofe wanza. Tatuwa mwana mwishipu. Isha kampeni ukuyalisha mfuti na matia gasi. Nishi ipafishiwe. Na baifisa na pamenso na baikaka uliomu mwendo kakilefisa lupamenso nishi. This country, Zambia need prayers. Alwani mwaba na mfokuli program, tupepe sana pamakana uko chitakava ba mundu vile muma people. Uko honto na bakebi, uko wachitakava, bonsa mumulendela grupu ya muma people. Chitatua tala muna pokumpini ya ifi. Nga mwaya bala kujanishi, shongo bachi kwata, bachi mushoduni, bachi la sampa, na kuchachi bachani. Bantu bachiraenda fe bali mu Lusaka balenda baleshinguruko ero mwaba konka mwaya mukubatika intimidate mwatoba ule vintu abantu batoba ula ukuyira tini twalipata security mu Zambia shiwana ama observer bakusamu kuchikaya ama election nabeta bale monana na lawlessness nishinga police bale ichita Bayaba civilian na bachindika bali abantu ba police baluka ba civilian. What is Zambia we have? Sure. Nishi Zambia yarubani mwe bantu bakwalisa. Hello, campaign yaka yena. You have first condolences to our Vice President ba Guy Scott, ba President, ba Vice President. No kutekesha bali nene chivemba may so rest in peace. Not batotela pafe ba bombele na pafe kwali ukulishanya ba PF balushanya mpaka fya isa kontolupa. Kwa batotela. Nomba ila batila nda bati bushebala iminika bo kuchita kampeni yelo bena kulabale kampeni. Ichachi tika Muzambia chikuru sana. Baisi leo baifwa. Baisi leo tatuashika. But tuli muma campaign. Kabili kuwaponeka na chimbi. Ichiliro. Na umbi afu. Muli muma campaign. Ndipo Muzambia muli chachalo ba mwapa. Ala muli tense chalo. Bantu. Tetu shofo inga filondola. Kuikata fe pakalu. Wala atamba fe walondola kufofini. Bantu ififile chitipapie. Umukuru wako tamenso la kumupachifie ba mwamba fie kutowa munati fifile tsika Muzambia it's not normal ama blood ya abantu basuma na tumono mwana kasho basanka wire nyona uko kumonzo uko namba mira pashinda chala sumo mwana munono mwasumye omulopa ta every week kula sumya blood ni kampeni yakwe chishi upire ukuwa basi ababumba ba police state bale konka na fidya ku emirimo ilalandira fuwa kanga na ubumba yalandira notu muneno nganja ati bakonkenika batiteni intimidate kabala nikabiye ni kujekubali bushabali te Zambia yabo chalo nshibafuma ku pantu Zambia yabo te Zambia takwa bama Zambia yabiri mubapere ati abamundu birana makebi balambo kuchita kampeni ku Zambia uko Takwaba Zambia abafe wani Zambia And it's one Zambia, one nation, and our mother Zambia. Nisha our mother Zambia ya salukila mu 2020, muri uludu ilefe 2026, kutamba pa 2021, ukusafika 2026, Zambia ya saluka, awa ya saluka, yusafuro lekechipo. So atotela ba mwamba.
Thank you very much. The discharge of that tear gas and live ammunition in Kalingalinga is totally uncalled for. The police brought lawlessness and endangered the lives of ordinary people and civilians. The action of the police are totally careless. It's not not a matter of public order they were restoring, because there was no public order that was destroyed. There was no public order that was destroyed. So it's the police with their lawlessness that had brought this confusion. So please call and make your contribution. Please make your call and let's hear from you. Let's hear from you. I'll be closing on top of the hour. Today we're remembering Guy Scott, but also reviewing current affairs. I took time to delve into the issues regarding my interactions with the Vice President. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution. Hello, caller. Hello, caller. Uh-oh. Hello, caller. Yes, caller, make your contribution. Tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Chavipa fe pakulosha vafyashi va gas court atira fuka pamene moyo wavombe ina mkulanda kufyana nashaka kuafia kulanda kufyana mafyashi tire mteta pamene mo mlevu bamletu chef ndifingisa nomba umaikala sana white sometimes tunafika padi dinchi tira fotore kwa benefit mletu weba ona shime angatoa mwana fisika mcharo cha mafyashi pamwamba nomba fwe bana kukula chifwa inene ulela napani yumu aiche sana ngatomona ifipili chitika mdalo cheso tomona wa police behavior ina mista campaign no ni mdande no yumu aichofu uyumu ano bashitamu ndande timwachi one just like my brother nomba fwe bana fwe bade mune ifipili chitika mwa fyeshi mbala tutungula mara tuwala kusi echi mwera mwana ave ngimise pela. That's why the Echobalish Lamukuba Kashipin Galanda. So put your cobuino, and go put the Kovala Marach in Jamfrumavika Copolis Akulaya Kutirati, a character prevent for Miss Blokushta joint, could join Nama politics because Masangatine washing Sharaf Viram, Gamono Mendo, Yava, Mumino, one Buffet, Buffet, Chimbacha, Coffee. Ali for Bamupai. Tomone wa police abantu balendera it's a day abo bushipo kutibali musaka they need to move around so that people so that abantu bashi bati abafyashi ba mundibire na ba makibizu bali musaka and police bindishe bale chitabana bechinka tone vingalanda techindu chismasana so even ngaromba kufe kuri mwafyashi au na chimwafyashi na chirapo kulanda kosa masanta kulanda ti Bali bazumani nava twana niva Celestine Mkandira. Bali bazumani nava Celestine Mkandira. These two people they need to be understand. Mwavike panchi vilenda sana wa president. Like sometimes bare tushibisha chibwani mbona they are just to the vice allowed na bakateka balifyo kukonzu kwa president wezinchinabe nokwa no in chile zakoma chakona no ba instead of face nisha abantu nishibaka nishi ekyo nalaba kusoma vya nishi takuli abantu bambi abanga chita organize like ifine nga bali ku campaign abantu abanga bafa ukushita event Balande fya para mararis because abantu emasekretary namwe mtafini but mwasa ngati event village sikakwati kwati tamuli kwati mdara kwati ama secretary people they are complaining but these people they are just too quiet tapani event Balelanda and I was just surprised ukumfa baba mkandiri balishita condemn pamanani apa price ya matawe farera vasesina mukani but ama days on sikana bakatika bali ndabali which means it doesn't make sense aba bantu please like basansana bazuma na beni vasesite mukani like nekali pashinga kuri Philippines very we need to hear from them because if bana kukula yonze apa nomba ifinfiali nga tutula audience papa ma social media tulamala finifichitika but mwese ngatukuru bakateka nebe nokuwa ukuri bachite ifindo kwa abantu if chinengera ndefumwa fyashi ngatwa complainer we need those two people to react nomba ngatura ilishanya bazumani balizi but in ma secretary na ba sesistina abantu raishanya ati ku ifindo kwa filisona so bebena bali vyezi kole mishing imuli system so igatana rifya na rifya nokufya mishwa mudala ba mundu bili na nini chatu bali business ba mudala na ba vice president walishida imirimo ba presence na bazumani chinshi so these two people tebafuire vale kunka ukundu kukonzo kwa ba mundu bili na bene ukundu kukonzo kwa banani abo bantu rekenti bekali mu Lusaka for example naranda so mwafyashi pani no isema nisha kuti batambire ukulashita mobilize abantu akutira baka ukushita protect amabot namona vafuire batambire bakutumina amafoni ma district but masangati ama secretary bali uko bali kuchipata bali uko kurwa pula okulane bishinga manji turayangala sana isto ya benafuire baikara musika batambuka kutumina amanani abantu ochikona lelo na chinkali pasana na chimona press briefing bale ilisha nyawe ba isizeta baratuma abantu abo abakushita ateba kushaka atishina abantu bonanda ati abantu bale abakwe munifia mavotion shani ngabantu bale vote so nemo national ati these people they are not serious ukoni mishinga bazumante bali serious na banani okula na chira mvave kuri ba tibanani aba bolanda ba mwabirungu na bambi bachina ishana sana bachikwata katika ka press briefing barukona meshinga ama secretary mkwete ine shire brema bakateka ninjati bakateka na bakatumulimo okusana bakateka bali busy bamundubire na vice president ubu bafite wabo but ubu bafite buri kuma secretary.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you, my brother.
Two secretaries they are not serious. I don't know what I can say. Ngakuba tande isn't fire abantu bambi because these people they need to mobilize. Lekini batamu kutumina abantu ma provinces. Abantu be aware ukuba isize n'abatuma kwa abantu. Chikona chama ati batumina ko muntu ruwonse bayize ma provinces. But ena chumbati n'abatuma kwa tuwa yupendi na nabakufika ko province which it's not making sense.
Thank you, my brother. Let's take some more calls. Thank you. You've made your point very clear about the secretaries. Thank you. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Hello, Bamwamba Mwabombeni.
Mwabombeni.
Thank you so much. I'm calling from the hand of AI as usual. Well, Bamwamba, ababa fumapo anyway bairishanya sana. But I was not supposed to talk about this, but I just want to try and also something. What I can say is your organization, Bamwamba, is quite big, and we are actually, when we respond to you, we respond to the right person. From what I can see, I'm sure abali mubonse bali shiba if you think fibombwa organize. This is what I can say. They know how they are organizing themselves. My biggest worry is the security of our two presidents, Bamundubire and Bamakebi Zulu. My biggest worry. Yeah, which could also work out nicely, Gwebati, there with a big group. You know, being a new, team. Other than that, Bamwamba, there is I want to start with, which is very important. Yeah, I'm going to just read a very short part on the March on Washington by Dr. Martin Luther King. Yes, he quoted, "I have a dream." On August 28, 1963, a monumental event unfolded in American history. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, organized by civil rights leaders. This event aimed to shine spotlight on the persistent struggles faced by African Americans, particularly in areas such as employment, civil rights. The march, which attracted an estimated 250,000 participants, culminated in Dr. Martin Luther King's icon, "I Have a Dream" speech, a moment that has become a cornerstone in the ongoing fight for racial equality. Now, Bamwamba, where am I going? Today, when it comes to our own African countries, it's more to ethnicism, and it's a significant issue in many African countries, Bamwamba, deeply affecting what Dr. Martin Luther King pronounced in "I Have a Dream." But Ambassador, where am I going? This is an that I'm asking to myself, and I'll answer it. Today, we have somebody who has a big dream. And this is President Mundubire, to liberate the Zambian people from the hardships, which is seen openly to the whole world. You know? Bamwamba, we are left with less than a month, and we have seen the turnover of everything. Bamwamba, what I saw today, what happened today, you know, thanks to social media, wherever you are, Bamwamba, you can get the news easily, instantly. What happened today, Bamwamba, to a child was unacceptable. There is no way police can open fire to people who are just innocent, very much innocent. Bamwamba, I can rest assure you, and to every listening to me, they are trying to create the frustration in people so that if they see people will start retaliating, then they are going to call for, what is it called? The state of emergency, so that they can now elections. I'm appealing to all the Zambians, please do not try and respond. Be calm, because we know what we are looking for. The Lord has answered, and I pray to our Heavenly Father to keep Bamundubire na Bamakebi Zulu in safe hands. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I've just been alerted that there's been an attack on Dani Gwariayenga's campaign center in Kabwata, and they've damaged equipment, and they've damaged vehicles, and they've stormed the area. And the security that was found there have been injured, and they've been taken to health facilities. Dani in Kabwata. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from, and make your contribution.
Bamamba, good evening. My name is calling you from Kasama now in Lusaka.
Yes, Mutale.
Bamwamba, what is happening is I want to condemn the violence of UPND. First and foremost, I want to say my condolences to the family of the former acting president and the vice president of the country, Guy Scott. Like you mentioned, that what is it that I remember of? I remember of in the manner the way he was trying to speak or to be black, to be an African, to be a Zambian. He really tried to be, because every time you walk and find him, he would speak in Nyanja or Bemba. At least he tried those things. And I mean, the soul of that man rests in eternal peace. Another question is that since the UPND have been looking for someone to bury in that grave, at this hour, does it mean they'll find the alternative? Like I think yesterday I saw some social media posting where Tapo Kabwana, I don't know whether the posting is genuine or is confirmed that, hey, I find someone to bury in that grave that was meant for the late President Lungu. I don't know whether, and I know you have touched earlier on, but remember, if you've seen, I want to talk about violence, and you have just mentioned the attack of the Kawata MP, Yenga, incoming MP for Kawata. We as Zambians, we have to condemn this violence at all costs. We have to condemn it in totality. If you have seen last week, in Senanga, Isoniso was throwing stones. He went with a group of people where they went and attacked the independent candidate. And these things, it's ongoing. Remember, this is a thing that Isoniso had already promised the nation that we will be doing these things. No independent candidate will file in or do. There are all those utterances or warning way before these happenings. So the UPND is so determined, is so geared that to cause confusion. There are no facts, there are no evidence to this, but there are reports that in 2021, UPND had organized the militia from Angola where weapons were smuggled in an event that Israel had refused to hand over power. The country would have been on fire. And now we are seeing the same thing. No single day, videos are there of evidence. Things are happening. Garing Kombo was attacked in Mazabuka, and we have seen it from all over the country. No single day the president has denounced and attacked this behavior. The president is every day in public, on stage, he has not condemned this behavior. Meaning the president is the one actually financing this. Isoniso is not a small boy. He's not somebody that you can scratch. You want him to know his name. He's the name that people know across the country and west in UPND. So, and he's there confirming that he will cause havoc. And right now, this thing is happening. I just want to urge the camp of the President Makebi and President Munduvire to tighten up security, because these people, what we are hearing, it can be true. It cannot be propaganda. But Ambassador, in my last remarks is that there's a rumor that the coming of Takari has come in the country to help up rigging an election. He has come with a specialist, the hackers from that side, and you know the Indonesia part, the Asian part, the Asia, they are good in IT. He has come with the people trying to do whatever they can, and the snipers. I don't know how true it is, but this story is there. So we will know very well whereby the DPP director refused that he doesn't know that Tahari has a case in court. And yet it was the DPP which was prosecuting Tahari. And today the DPP director is refusing, or he pretends that he doesn't know anything. So everything can tell that what is it that is going on? What is it that is being cooked? And these are the things that we have to take keen interest in as a people, as a nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Today we're discussing and remembering Guy Scott. What were your thoughts about Guy Scott? And we're doing an update. We are in an election season, 27 days before to go. We have to also touch on the politics and what's going on. And there's been the World Cup also that has kept you busy. But our country, I think, has been kept very busy with the campaigns as we edge closer. Okay. So today we're remembering Guy Lindsay Scott. The Zambian government has declared 5 days of national mourning. He'll be remembered as our vice president. He was MP for Mpika and later Lusaka Central, and he formed his own party, Lima Party. He came and joined the PF in 2001, and as we say, the rest is history. We remember him very well, his contribution to the country, and his wife, Charlotte Scott. Our deepest condolences to Madame Charlotte Scott. We'll see if we can have another broadcast. Today we had a special broadcast dedicated to Dr. Guy Scott. Of course, we use the opportunity to discuss other things. So, good day. We'll see you tomorrow.
We have said there will be no more database. We are going to run a government that will give opportunities to all. Like we said, we'll embark on a merit-based recruitment process where every Zambian will be given a chance to be employed in the civil service. So there will be no need to belong to a database. You don't need to belong to any database, as it were. Yeah, it doesn't matter what your name is. What they'll be looking at when we say merit-based, they'll be looking at your qualifications. So we want Zambians to be free. We want Zambians to be comfortable. We don't want Zambians to begin to change their names so that they qualify for certain positions. Maintain your names. Be who you are. You will still be given a chance. We say to our people when we went to Chinsali, and we were also, I think, somewhere in Malambo, we say database, Zambians were answering at Kuyavevele. Anything else which has to do with database at Kuyavevele. Because that's the end. Yeah. So, colleagues, countrymen and women, what we are doing is resetting the country, getting back the country on its rails, getting back the country to begin to function normally. So do your school, go to college, go to university. When the opportunities are there, they will be advertised to the media. Respond to those adverts. The selection process will be transparent. For those cases where we want to employ at district level, the names that will be stuck at DEB's office for those that have been chosen to be employed as teachers, there will be people that people that interact with freely. Those that will be chosen as
a regular contributor, a friend of ours from UK. Hello, caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and what will be your contribution.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Well, my name is Isaac Mlezuma Njovu.
Yes, Isaac.
Diaspora coordinator chairperson. Indeed, we have been observing what is been undertaking and what is happening back home. And the Zambia police have not taken seriously action against the happenings and also the wrongdoings that do need them to act upon and give could be stern punishment that the other end have received in terms of the camp of Honorable presidential candidate Brian Mundubire and Makebi Zulu, NRPUP. And we are surprised to continue, of course, receiving reports, but only nothing, no action that has been taken but they are quick to act whenever there is minimal, could be issues that can be resolved, considering policing is needed. And the Zambian people are watching. There are so many instances and incidences that have happened, be it in Western Province, Kusesheke, Remunefirechtika, we have observed that, and be it also in Lusaka Province in itself, we have seen even as of today, there has been shooting, but no statement has been released from the Zambia police. Zambia police are very quick to make statements. Even the ECZ are very quick to punish or to give, instructions that at the end of the day will affect the activities involving the opposition, yet leave the ruling party freely and go scot-free without any punishment, without them being mentioned with all the wrongs that they are doing. So it's very sad, but the good part is that the Zambian people are watching. We live in a digital era, and everyone is seeing what is happening. And what I can say is that from a distant and being in diaspora, we are observing and very steadfast. And very steadfast in terms of the information that is reaching us, and also just observing what is happening or undertaking back home. It is a very sad sight, but we remain hopeful, and we remain very resolved and advocate for a better Zambia that will not only distinguish people because they support UPND today, or could be when we come into power as the president by some power abantu baba support are the ones that should not go unpunished, where rule of law is needed or is also expected to effectively applied. I thank you very much, Ambassador.
Thank you, Isaac. Thank you very much. I'll call you after the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, that marks the end of our program. He was our last caller. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.